Oh, good. Ladies and gentlemen, this morning you were all welcomed as group, as members, but I like to special welcome Mr. Ingmar de Vos, FEI President. Thank you very much. They save all the difficult questions for you. So, maybe you've seen yesterday and also today that we have presenters, and normally we give gifts to the presenters. It looked a bit like a Dutch treat because they didn't get anything. But our gifts just flew in from England, and so I have to apologize that there's no special gift package. But I would like to give the gifts to the presenters from yesterday and from this morning already. So, Sharon, please assist me.
Yes. Who are you going to call first?
Ladies first.
Francis, let's go, Joe.
Okay. The first edition of the IDLC star.
Wait.
And it will be available in our shop after. Okay. I'll just put it on.
John, you should have one. You should have one.
Then Stefan, please approach. This is a special tie, also a collector's item, just produced in England, so it's old-fashioned. You can.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm really right now.
Are you wearing it?
Yeah.
You can see it's wearable.
Of course. Thank you very much indeed.
Mr. Smith, ready? Same for you. Have a four judge again.
Nice. Stefan. Stefan.
John Roach, yes. Yes, Sir John Roach.
Captain.
Captain John Roach. Come on, Mr. Smith.
Now.
So that's the less difficult thing, and the other part of the day will be in the hands of our moderator, Mr. Nick Brooksward.
Thank you very much, Willem. Before I introduce perhaps the busiest person in the FEI, Mr. Mikael Rentsch, Mikael, perhaps you would like to listen to this statement that was read out under an hour ago when we were discussing the new position of secretaries. Now, I have one picture on my telephone which will tell you that Stefan has, once in his life, been a secretary for one round of show jumping. I have the evidence. The pen broke halfway through the round, but anyway, it doesn't matter. But anyway, when we were discussing secretaries, Mikael, I wonder how you would like to play this. The secretary of the grand jury, and I quote, doesn't have to be an educated person. Hashtag me too, just saying. Anyway, thank you very much, Stefan. That was it actually was a very good talk for you. It really was, actually. And from an OC's behalf, do you know, genuinely, we know the pressures at top-level events that the grand jury, the stewards, are under. And actually, a secretary, and I don't like the expression liaise judge. I think you're all part of one team and one dream. But actually, it is very, very important, having been in that situation before. which is a situation that we don't want to go down the route of again. And I think that Stefan and his team in the jumping committee are actually doing an amazing job for jumping in the world of horse sport. So very well done, Stefan, and to Kazuya and all your team. Thank you very much. And now we are going to hand over to Mikael Rentsch, who is the legal director of the FEI.
Thank you very much. So for those who don't know me, my name is Mikael Rentsch, and if you don't know me, it's probably a good sign. That means that you didn't have to deal with a legal issue or legal matter. So I'm here today to present you a few items that I thought would be relevant for you, and feel free to ask me any questions and to interrupt, and really it can be interactive as it was with Stefan earlier today. So I will go through the decision-making process at FEI events, field of play decisions, yellow warning cards, blood rule, abnormal limb sensitivity, technical assistance, the falls on the athlete's clearance that we touched base earlier this morning, FEI safeguarding policy against harassment and abuse, and review of the legal system. So decision-making process. It might be redundant for you because I keep saying this to all of you, but it's really important that when you take a decision, the process is being followed. And before you can take a decision on any protest or appeal, the relevant body, so it would be the grand jury or the appeal committee in most of the time, must examine the available evidence, whether written or oral, hear all the parties concerned, and then you need to take into account any relevant material in order to try to find a fair and equitable decision. Most of the time, you know what has happened, and you know already the rules, and you are really specialist about the jumping rules, you know everything inside out, but how to reach to that decision is very important, because riders, chef d'équipe, horse owners, they want to find any loopholes, and if they cannot lose on what we call the merits, on the decision itself, they will try to challenge how you reach the decision. So it's really important that you follow the relevant steps. Now, it's also important to decide first whether you have jurisdiction. So instead of going into the whole matter, if the matter cannot be protested or cannot appeal, or you are not the right body, you can just decide on that. So you just say, sorry, I do not have jurisdiction, I'm not the right body, so I'm not going even to give you a decision on the outcome of what was the issue. I just issue a decision, I do not have jurisdiction because whatever article applies and prevent me in deciding. Now, again, any decision can only come after you have examined to all the initial evidence and had heard all the parties. And even if you believe there is no jurisdiction, even if you believe there is no jurisdiction and somebody comes, I'll give you an example, a horse inspection. The decision at the horse inspection, if you eliminate a horse, is final, right? You all know that, so you cannot protest it. So you will say, if somebody files a protest, no, there is no protest. But actually, somebody can protest the procedure of the horse inspection. If you need a minimum of 3 grand jury members and there was only 1 and they took the decision, they might have a case. So you better still look at the matter that is being protested or appealed, so that you can decide whether there is jurisdiction or not. If it's the mere elimination and the procedure was followed, indeed, the protest will not be allowed. Now, somebody may come to you informally saying, oh, I have this issue, what would be the outcome, and so on. So you need to provide the relevant information. And if they want to go to, let's say, the disciplinary legal disputes, they would need to follow the correct procedures, which is filing a protest, paying the deposit, and so on. So it's not just like conversation and then you can change the outcome and so on. It needs to be challenged the right way. And then if the person that is objecting is not the right one, you need to correct. So according to the general regulation, it has to be the chef d'équipe, a person responsible if there is no chef d'équipe, or president of national federation. So if it's a spectator trying to protest, that's not going to be okay. Notification of decision. Decision must be orally delivered or notified in writing. Ideally, of course, in legal, we prefer when it's in writing. We do understand the time constraints, so if you are due to officiate within 10 minutes and you take a decision, you might not have access to a laptop, you might not have access to a pen and papers, so you may give the decision orally that is acceptable according to our system. Regarding protests and appeals, you know that there are forms available on the FEI websites that I think it's a good tool for everybody to know exactly what is being appealed, and all the information is being provided. We have also now prepared for what we call big events like championships and World Equestrian Games. We prepared a template form for the decision, because that's also one of the comments we received is like, what kind of information do we need to put on that template decision? So we have prepared templates for the grand jury decisions and appeal committee. I will provide them to your club so that they can disseminate and send them to you, so that hopefully it will be a tool. It's not published on the website because obviously it's not something that is needed for the riders or the horse owners to know, but only for officials. Field of play decisions. As we are in an Olympic qualification year, I thought I would show you what had happened in 2015 at the Euro. Exactly, and there are a few of you who were there. So I will show you the video. I'm sure you're all familiar with that, and I will give you some information about it.
With the 9-year-old, good luck. Kian, he was clear yesterday. Ireland with 2 4s on the board today, and that team in 9th place overnight.
This is a super horse, but a bit short on mileage, but jumped fabulous in Dublin. Clear and 4 in that superb win for Ireland just 2 weeks ago. Cian O'Connor in determined mode. Ooh, stretch, got it. Oh, this horse has got some jump, hasn't he? Now, 4 or 5. He'd have jump enough and care enough to come on 4, he would. Easy peasy. Ability. Sheer ability.
It jumps as high as Fibonacci of Meredith.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And Ireland need 2 clears, and they need them badly. Oh. They cannot come on the forward stride to that double of oxes, double of verticals there. Jumping that big oxer very well. A good round. Just inside the time, but not quite good enough for Ireland, I'm afraid.
Cian O'Connor, 1 fence down, 4 faults. Fabulous clear yesterday, but 4 faults today, and overnight as an individual. Cian.
What's the point he's making here?
Well, I don't know, but there was something going on, because I heard...
Oh, one of the ring stewards there just had to hop out of his way, and then he had the next fence down, didn't he?
I thought I heard a noise from the crowds. We just couldn't see what
exactly. Exactly.
So as you see, it was quite an interesting incident, and some interesting facts as well was that the horse was called Good Luck. Well, not really good luck. The person that was in the way of Cian O'Connor was, of course, Spanish. And guess what? It was an Olympic qualifier. Because of this 4-point penalty, Ireland didn't get the qualification to the Olympic Games. And which team did they get? Spain. So we have all the relevant ingredients for a good movie. And there was also an Irish TV crew that was filming Cian O'Connor for the last 6 months. And actually, it was called Road to Rio. Well, it was more Road to CAS, the Court of Arbitration for Sport, in the end. So you probably all know that there are basically 2 rules there. So basically, in the event of the athlete not being able to continue his run for any reason or unforeseen circumstance, the bell should be rung to stop the athlete. But there is also this rule where the athlete can also stop voluntarily. And obviously he didn't. So if you were in the grand jury, would you have rung the bell? No. Nobody. And indeed, the grand jury didn't ring the bell. You could see that they didn't ring the bell. But if they had rung the bell, and I will go that afterwards, because that was one of the criticism during the dispute from the Irish team, said, well, they should have rung the bell. And the grand jury was like, well, we saw that there was an incident, we saw that. And then the grand jury believed that it didn't have an impact on the horse path on the rider. So they said it actually would have been worse if we had rung the bell, because if we ring the bell and then we stop you, and then you need to re-jump, then maybe he would have also have the 4-point penalty, and then he would have criticized that decision as well. So it's very subjective, and if it had been more serious, the incident, maybe the grand jury would have rung the bell. Now, if a protest is being lodged, and there was a protest lodged, would you then review the video footage? Yes? Okay, so here in that instance, basically what happened on the protest form, they asked for the video footage to be reviewed, and I'll tackle later on what are the requirements to review video footage. But here also, the initial reaction of the grand jury was like, yeah, but we know what has happened. Yes, we saw the person in the middle of the course. But here, first of all, it was made on the protest, so I think that's the decision of the president of the grand jury to decide to rely on video or not. Even if you already know what you have seen, it's always good to rewatch to make sure that there are no new elements or something that actually you couldn't watch live. And then would you hear the rider, chef d'équipe, the volunteer who was on the way? I think here again, you need to hear anybody that is relevant, and it helps afterwards if you have done that. It shows that you have actually, you cared about your decision, and you cared about what they had to say, and they need to have that opportunity to explain themselves. Now, on site, they basically lodged a protest, was denied by the grand jury, filed an appeal with the appeal committee, was denied at 3 in the morning. Then they decided to appeal that. It went directly to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. Do you know why it didn't go to the FEI tribunal? Because the most logical would be that it goes to the FEI tribunal first. So basically, initially, the Irish team and the federation had appealed that, and it should have gone to the FEI tribunal, but the FEI, we suggested to go directly to CAS. And first of all, our rules allow for it. And then if we had won at the FEI tribunal stage, they would have appealed to CAS anyway. So we have ended up in the CAS. And if we had lost the FEI, we would have appealed to CAS anyway. So we decided, let's go directly to CAS. It will be more straightforward. And Stefan had the pleasure to come to Lausanne for a full day waiting for that. It was an important decision, obviously, and it sets out really important criteria that the Court of Arbitration for Sport has always applied consistently, including that case. And the first one is the referee's bona fide, so the good faith exercise of judgment or discretion is beyond challenge otherwise than insofar as the rules of the games themselves provide. So basically, the CAS will not amend a decision, and I'll tell you later on what ground they could amend the decision, but basically here they say it cannot be challenged unless the system of the federation allows for the system. And in our system, we allowed the protest and we allowed the appeal to be lodged, which was sufficient. And then why do they say so? They basically say so that because the CAS arbitrators, they have no experience in equestrian sport. It will be a lawyer that does mainly athletics. It could be a non-sports person. It could be anybody. So they lack the technical expertise. There is always the element of subjectivity. And then there is also a need to avoid constant interruption. Otherwise, if every time there is a challenge for a field of play decision, then it's not something that is going to be sustainable. And then the CAS jurisprudence, they also state something that is really important. It states that the participants are entitled to have referees make honest decisions, but not necessarily the correct ones. So mistakes will happen, and you will make mistakes. I make mistakes every day, and it's okay, as long as you do it in good faith, as long as you do it honestly, and as long as you fulfill these requirements. So in that case, about whether you need to ring the bell or not ring the bell, In either scenario, if the grand jury would have rung the bell, you would have won a cast. We would have won a cast, because if in good faith you would have said, no, it disturbed the rider, we really believe that we needed to ring the bell and the rules allow for it, it would have been okay. So there was no wrong conduct to be made by the grand jury, as long as you know your rules, you know on what ground, and you do it in good faith, honestly, and you are not biased. Then the only time that the court would interfere is when an official's field of play decision is tainted by fraud, arbitrariness, or corruption. So basically, if a grand jury will receive money and then take a decision, that's a different ballgame. So I believe it was not the case in that instance, so we are safe on that one. So that was it for me on the field of play. So I think it's really important here again that you know the rules, you follow the processes. If you do that, there will be subjectivity, there will be cases that are borderline. We know that the jumping rules are crystal clear all the time, no interpretation, so you are pretty safe. Now, yellow warning card. You all know that there is a form on the FEI website that allows you to give yellow warning card. And then there are some key elements in order to give a yellow warning card, in my view. First one is, please consult the list of athletes who already have a yellow warning card, because as you know, if you receive a second yellow warning card within 12 months period, you have a 2 months automatic suspension. And the 2 months automatic suspension is not happening at the event, it comes as of the notification by the Secretary General of the FEI. So it's likely to be delayed by a few days, because we will receive the information, the report, and then the FEI will notify and will implement the 2 months suspension. So it's not for you, grand jury, to implement that 2 months suspension. Yellow warning cards may be issued by President of Grand Jury, President of Appeal Committee, Chief Steward, or Technical Delegate. Here as well, before giving a yellow warning card, it's always good to, first of all, to check with the person responsible, most likely is going to be the rider, to inform him, to give the opportunity to explain, and then to notify. You need to notify that person. We had instances where the rider actually didn't know that he had received a yellow warning card. And then if it's a second one, and then if he's suspended for 2 months, he will challenge, but I've never been notified on the first one. So then we need to have the proof of the notification. So there are several ways of proving notification. First one is maybe take a witness with you, so at least you are 2 officials, so then you can rely on a witness if later is being challenged. Try to notify the rider. If you can't, you can inform the FEI headquarters, and we can do it within 14 days after the event. We can notify officially, or do it through the chef d'équipe or any other persons that are on site, but it's really important to do so. Refusal to sign by the person responsible, the yellow warning card does not invalidate it. So they cannot say, oh, I don't sign, I don't accept it. It used to be the case before my time, I believe, but that is no longer the case. So if you give a yellow warning card, even if he refused to sign, put a note, put a comment, refuse to sign, but it was duly notified on that day, and I have a witness. The blood rule. Stefan explained earlier this morning that it is elimination now. So elimination, blood on the horse flanks and horse bleeding in the mouth. And of course, if it's in minor cases of blood in the mouth, such as when the horse appears to have bitten its tongue or lip, officials may authorize the rinsing or wiping of the mouth and allow the athletes to continue. Any further evidence of blood in the mouth will result in elimination. There will still, however, the possibility to disqualify, but that is more serious, and that means disqualification is mandatory. So here we have no flexibility. You have to apply it, but it's only when marks indicating excessive use of the spurs or the whip anywhere on the horse. And there it's mandatory, the disqualification, and then additional sanction may also apply, and that would most likely be done and dealt with by the FEI tribunal. So if you have like a serious abuse of horse, then you will automatically a mandatory disqualify there, and then you will make a report, hopefully gather all evidence, video footage, photographs, statements, forward this to the FEI headquarters, and then we will tackle and open potentially, if it's serious enough, a disciplinary matter against the rider or the person at stake. Here again, it's really important that you follow the necessary procedures. So be aware of the protocol that in the steward's manual. It's Annex 16 to the FEI manual for jumping stewards. So it sets out really the step-by-step that needs to be followed. And I don't know whether your Frances touched base with it yesterday, so I think you did. That's very good. Here again, if you follow these steps, we are much stronger and safer legally. Abnormal limb sensitivity. So this is part of the veterinary regulations. You know that there is examination being made by examined vets, and now there is, or since a few years now, there is an initial examination that is being made, and if it indicates that the horse has an abnormal limb sensitivity, it could be anything, we don't know. It could be something that is an injury, it could be done on purpose whatsoever. The veterinarian will actually inform the person responsible about this, and the rider has the opportunity to withdraw the horse from the event without any further consequences. So obviously, it's a welfare of the horse mechanism. So we give them the opportunity to withdraw if they want. If the horse is not withdrawn, and if the rider doesn't want to withdraw the horse, they are allowed to do so. However, there will be a further examination with the grand jury and the veterinary delegate to decide whether the horse should be allowed to continue in the competition or be disqualified. So here it's a disqualification in case of abnormal limb sensitivity. Steps need to be followed, but that would be video recorded, and then the person responsible and the representative have a right to be heard and the opportunity to present any information or evidence they wish. There is a disqualification form here, so it should be also pretty straightforward for you to know what information needs to be on that form. Signed by the examining vets, the foreign veterinary delegate, and one member of the grand jury. And then if there is an appeal committee, the PR may ask for the attendance of one member of the appeal committee. Here the same principle as for the yellow running card, the disqualification form must be signed by the PR, ideally. And we know that in the heat and of the issue, is likely that the rider is going to refuse that. It doesn't invalidate the disqualification form. And here again, make sure that it's been properly notified. There is no appeal against that decision of the grand jury following a final examination, so it is a final outcome. So it's really important here again that you follow the steps. Now, there is this provision that if the horse is disqualified more than 12 hours prior to a competition for which it is qualified to compete, the person responsible may request that the horse be re-examined. So you need to give that opportunity if it meets the requirements. It needs to be made within 30 minutes of the notification by the grand jury of the horse disqualification. Here, it may not be retroactively disqualified from the competition unless the examination is commenced within 60 minutes. So if it's done most of the time now, the examination is being made prior to competition and we can disqualify, but if it's being made after the competition, we can disqualify from the former class if it's within 60 minutes. Technical assistance. We do have the general principle in the general regulations regarding video recordings, and video recordings to be accepted must be presented within the required time period, and relying on video evidence to alter the outcome of any competition after the results have been communicated must contain irrefutable evidence that the original ruling or decision was incorrect. You do have provision in the jumping rules regarding this. So videos must be presented to the president of the grand jury within 30 minutes after the official results are announced. And then there are some way where we exclude video recording. So video recording may never be used to establish the time of an athlete's round. And now with reference to the water jump, the decision of the water jump judge is final. I know that in many occasions people look at the video footage for the water jump, but when you read that provision, it says the water jump judge decision is final, so there is no challenge to be made, including with video recording. What is an official video recording? It's made by the designated host broadcaster or the accredited broadcaster or the official video recording company named by the organizer or the FEI. Videos recorded by any other entity are not acceptable under any circumstances. We know that nowadays many people use iPhones iPads, whatsoever, to record anything. If they present you with video footage from that, it's not acceptable under our jurisdiction. So you cannot rely on that. Even if there is the best evidence or proof ever, you cannot rely on that. I see a question here.
In the case of the water jump, who decides if the video can be seen or not? The president of the grand jury or the water jump judge?
For the water jump, it's even not accepted anyway to have video recording. So the question has not to be asked.
That's correct and not totally accurate at the same time. However, because we've had a lot of disputes at the water jump over the past couple of years, and together with Longy now, we actually do from time to time place a video camera on the water jump, and the ground jury has full view of that in the judge's box. So this is probably one rule that may well be looked at in future. Unless the chairman of the jumping committee would like to say something else.
No, I would not like to say something else. I would strongly support what John has just said. We are in a kind of testing phase now. We had that at the last World Question Games. We had that at the last Nations Cup final. We will try to extend that for this season on some other shows. We had a kind of Hawkeye camera at the water jump, which was then an official video, and we were using that, or better to say the ground jury was able to use that. In my interpretation, and as I say, we are in the test phase and there is not a clear rule about that. We can't make it mandatory at the moment for technical reasons. But where we use it, my interpretation is that in this case, it has to be the water jump judge who has to ask for the video evidence, because he is, in any case, the only one who makes the final decision. And if we now have that technical support, which is there for exactly that purpose, that the water jump judge could take another look at that, then it shouldn't be the ground jury president making a decision whether we take a look at the video or not. Then it has to be the water jump judge who takes a look at that. And if he then, based on that video, he wants to reconsider his decision, then he can do so, but it still stays his decision. And for that reason, what we did in practice was we really took care that only the water jump judge took a look at the video and not the whole ground jury, because then everybody has a different opinion and it's still the decision of the water jump. So this is what we do for practical reasons at the moment, John, if you would agree to this. Oh, I'm very happy to hear that. It will be in the rules most likely soon as we make it mandatory for certain events to have a camera. But at the moment it's a testing phase and we have to be a little bit flexible with that. Hopefully legal is happy with that.
Thank you. No, I'm fine with that, to have this testing phase. And we also realized, and actually in Rio, we had to look at the video footage on the water because we've been challenged. And it helps if you can demonstrate that actually there was no, there was actually the horse hit the water and so on. So it helps your case. But most of the time, the angles of the cameras are not great. And you could see that you can have 10 cameras, but you don't have the right angle to take the right decision. So if technologies allow, we will need to clarify that and to have a protocol and to decide who decides, who can access. Can the rider see the footage? Yes, no. Can the chef d'équipe see the footage? Yes, no, and so on. And I think also I'll touch base later on that, on the review of the FEI legal system. That's one question that the legal department had, because we do have the official video footage only can be used. We know that in practice, you all rely on whatever evidence is being provided to you. If somebody comes with a nice video from an iPhone, whatever, great quality, you can see slow motion, you can see actually really good evidence. So is it something that the FEI needs to look at? Do we need to allow other type of video, under what criteria? It's open for debate, and I think it could help anybody, as long as it's clear what can be reviewed and what cannot be reviewed. So this one we will tackle. At the moment, I wouldn't feel that comfortable if we would have to amend the. And actually, we had the case at the World Cup, no, the Nations Cup final in Barcelona, where they said, "Oh, but it was clear that that there was no penalty at the water jump. I want to protest." So I say, "Okay, but if we start to allow that, what about the others that are affected with the ranking?" They will first thing say, "Yeah, but it says the decision of the water jump judge is final." So we will need to tweak the rules So even if John didn't want to make any changes to the jumping rules for next year, there will be maybe a few clarifications to be made. Falls, I think there was lots of questions this morning, including during the coffee break, already received a few questions regarding the new provision in Article 224. So in the case of a fall of an athlete and or a horse at any time in the competition arena, in the practice arena or elsewhere, the athlete and or the horse must be cleared by the event's medical service, respectively the veterinary delegate, before the athlete may be permitted to take part in the next round or competition. Here, basically, we do have a challenge for the medical personnel, because medical personnel at events are not within, let's say, the FEI system. So they are not receiving a seminar like you are having today. They are maybe paramedics. They might be a hospital nearby being there. So do we expect them to take the decision for $1 million prize money that they will say to the leading rider for the second round? Actually, you cannot compete, because I believe that you are not, I won't clear you from a medical perspective. Some will do, some will be reluctant to be doing that. So we discussed that internally, including with the medical committee, and we will clarify also later this year, hopefully, and for good for all discipline and so on. But for me, the provision earlier needs to be read in conjunction with the general regulation, which is the ground jury, after consultation with the responsible medical officer, may at any time exclude from further participation in a competition any athlete who is unfit to continue by reason of a serious or potentially serious injury, impairment, or health condition. And I think it's really important that the decision is being taken by the ground jury. Why? Because ground jury, you have the authority to take decisions, and if a rider does not accept that, they can challenge that decision. But at least you will do so relying on the medical personnel, and I'll tell you how you will get the information. So we do have an online person injury reporting mechanism. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but there is a form that is including in the FEI Doctor's Pack. And I really invite you to look at the FEI Doctor's Pack, because it's not only for doctors, but it gives you good information as to also concussion, what steps need to be made in order to assess whether somebody is concussed, or whether you need to send that person to a hospital. So you can access it if you go on the FEI website, in your role official, you do have this Doctor's Pack. And there is also explanation as to the online person injury reporting. And if you are president of the ground jury, or if you are a foreign judge, you normally should receive an automatic email prior to the event, giving you the link as to where you need to access in order to have this online person injury reporting information being done. It's really important that you do that, because we put the obligation on the National Federation to ensure that the riders are fit to compete. And one of the comments we received from National Federation is like, if you are, let's say, US equestrian, you are based in Kentucky, and then you have an American athlete competing in Rome and has a fall, how do you expect the federation to know that the rider actually had a fall? So with that mechanism, if you fill in the online reporting form, there is an automatic notification, 1 to the FEI, and 2 to the National Federation, and then they can do the follow-up, and then they can check with the rider, are you okay, what has happened, you need to be cleared. And the National Federation, many of them also have their clearance as to allow an athlete to compete in further competitions. So what we believed was the best way to tackle your new provision as of 1st of January is that we have extracted the information that is online, and we created a PDF, and I will here again send it to you, to the club, so that you will receive the PDF. And this is the document that the medical personnel has to provide normally on site. And normally they will do it online with the foreign judge or president ground jury, but here what we suggest that you give that document to the medical personnel, and you have the key information to be provided. This is only a screenshot of the first page. And then on the second page, we added for jumping athletes, so that section will be only for jumping athletes. Does the athlete appear to be fit to further participate in this event? Yes, no, not applicable. So it's not a decision from the medical personnel, but it's a medical assessment. Does it appear to be concussed? Yes, no. Does it appear to be fit? Yes, no. If it's a broken arm or broken leg, it's quite straightforward, but it could be tricky. And also for you to know, we discussed earlier about a fall, what is a fall and so on. Even if a rider falls on ends on his 2 feet, he can be concussed or she can be concussed. So we need to be aware of that. You don't need to hit your head to be concussed. So it could be quite serious. It's quite difficult to assess. So that's why we need medical personnel. So there are no requirements as to what is the job description of that medical officer, but there must be medical people normally always on site, so you need to rely on that information. And with that paper, you can then, the medical person can go to the grand jury, give the paper, this is what has happened, this is where the injury is, and then you have the information. Does the athlete appear to be fit for further participation in the event? Yes, no, and based on that, you, grand jury, take the decision as to whether you allow the athlete to compete or not. What is really important as well is we are dealing here with medical information. So don't leave then the paper on the jury box when you leave. So you need to make sure that it's really treated on a confidential basis and that it's not shared to anybody, because obviously we want to respect the right of the people. I received the question during the coffee break, what happens if the grand jury doesn't see the fall? What do you do? That's a good question. And obviously, if you haven't witnessed the fall, you need to rely on somebody else to tell you, potentially. So in my view, it's based on your judgment. Is the information reliable? Is it, ideally, if it's from an FIA official, chief steward or steward, and then they come to you, it's easier to assess and to accept it. If it's a spectator coming and say, oh, I saw that rider falling, and then you say, okay, maybe, maybe not. So then maybe you have the discussion with the athlete to see what has happened, and hopefully he'll tell the truth or she'll tell the truth. So we need to deal with that. And then another question is, what do you do if the fall happened the day before the event? What do you do? And here again, with the provision in the regulations, in my view, as grand jury, you can prevent somebody to compete if he's unfit to compete. So if he's impaired or has health problems. So if you have information that the rider had a fall yesterday and the event only started today, you can still ask a clearance. Say, based on what I have, I will only allow you to compete if you have a certificate from a doctor telling me that you are fit to compete. Otherwise, I'm not going to allow you, and you are backed up by the rules in order to do that. So I don't know if there are any questions on this or if it answers most of your concerns. I think it's a good compromise. We know that it's not ideal. We have asked the medical committee to put that on the agenda as well so that it can be looked at. I know that we will also need to deal with the horse. And for the horses, I will let that be dealt with by the veterinary committee and veterinary department. I think it's less of an issue. You made the question, maybe, Stefan, as well, as to can you force somebody to be checked by a doctor? I think here also it will depend on how serious the injury is and whether you can do that or not. But I leave you with questions or comments, Stefan.
You have answered my question already, or I guess I got the answer for my question, but I want to raise the question again that everybody knows that, because I asked you yesterday if we have to consider each and every fall that this is an accident. But from what I see there, the answer seems to be yes.
Yes.
Because in practice, the 2 shows I have judged, that there were some what we would call minor falls. Somebody slips down from the horse and there was really nothing. And the question was then, is that really an accident, and do we have to have that person injury report on that person? But as this person would go through this procedure, we would then also have an injury report on that person, even if it was nothing in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Lauren from Canada. You made the comment that this is health information, and we have very strict laws in our country around Health Information Act and the securing of health information. So these forms, if we're going to have to fill these forms out in the case of every fall, and it's considered to be health information, where do we store them? What happens with the record? Do we, the organizing committee, keep it? Do we have to keep it as president of the ground jury? What
The good thing is that you will fill it in online, so it will be sent to the FEI and then it's being stored in the FEI. So actually the paper, you can destroy it. You don't need it. You can destroy it. You can just do that.
Mikael, are these packs available in other languages as well?
I don't think at the moment. I think there are a few tools that are available, but it's a good point, and we'll look into that, and we should indeed do several languages. Thank you.
I would like just to ask the same, because normally at the small shows, it's very difficult to find somebody from the medical assistant who speak English and write English, that they will be speaking and writing in their home language. How you can understand it? Complete Polish, Chinese, Russians, and whatever.
The good thing now with the technical tool with your phone, you can ask them to translate immediately. It's not always accurate, but at least you get an idea. No, but it is a challenge for sure, and that's why the paramedics and the people are not in the FEI system, so it's not mandatory that they speak English, but obviously you need to rely on good information. But it's true also that we should at least try to have like the main languages be translated, Spanish, French, this kind of languages, that maybe it will help everybody to get the correct information. There was another question over there.
Freddy Smith, as a medical doctor, I must say I'm very skeptical about the whole procedure, because in most of the show there is not even a medical doctor available. You have only paramedics. And I'm pretty sure that not a single paramedic will sign a paper like this declaring that the rider is fit to continue and to compete. So I think theoretically I fully agree with it, but the feasibility of that on the spot, on the show, is going to be really difficult.
I think it will be difficult for the, let's call it, minor injury, but I think if it's quite obvious, that won't be an issue. It's also, experience has shown also that you may have doctors that don't know how to deal with concussion, and paramedics will actually have more experience in concussion, so it all depends on that. But it's true that we need to train these people. We need to let them know what they are supposed to do. And here again, they are not deciding, they're just giving the advice which they are supposed to do. And they also take the decision in normal shows whether a rider needs to be sent to the hospital or not, and so on. So. But I fully understand the concern, and we know that it might be difficult.
In order to declare that the rider is fit to continue, you need clinical examination. So that means that the rider has to go to hospital to be checked and to be examined by a doctor. Yep. And then I can assure you, you will not find many doctors in the hospital who will declare that he's really fit to continue. I think it's very, very difficult. And then what's going to happen? A rider falls in the arena, falls in the warm-up, and then it's a paramedic who is coming. Okay, are you all right? Yes, I'm all right. Okay, fine, you can continue. From a theoretical point of view, I think this is great. But from the practical point of view, I'm really suspicious.
Sorry. Kate Horgan, Ireland. I'd just like to say I've had the show this year already. I had first-hand an accident in the warm-up with a rider. The rider actually didn't fall, but was kicked by another horse. So the paramedics were in the warm-up, and luckily one of the paramedic leader was a medical doctor. On the spot, he looked at the rider, got her off the horse. She didn't want to come down off the horse, kept saying, I'm okay, and he said no. And ultimately she was sent to hospital for x-ray. But before that he had said she's not fit to compete. It was lucky it was a medical doctor who was there and had the courage of his convictions. But a lot of the first responders nowadays are properly trained in any of the equestrian sports. And I think you have to take their word. If they're prepared to put their name there, it should be go ahead. The riders will always say they are fine.
Exactly. And I think from an FEI perspective, I'm more inclined to prevent a rider, and then maybe it was not that important, because we need, as a prevention, we need to ensure that only riders are fit to compete. So of course they're going to say that they are fine. Of course, if there is prize money to be won, they're going to say they are fine, or even worse, the horse owner will say, no, the rider is fine, and you have to go because there is a 1 million prize money. So here we really need, we have a duty to protect them. You probably are aware that other international federations have been sued and for huge damages because of concussion, because they didn't do anything. So we do have a role to protect our athletes. And there might be a few occasions that we prevented the rider, he could not win prize money, and he's going to sue the FEI, but I think we do it for the right reasons. One point I forgot to mention, if somebody is having a fall or is injured, he is likely to take medication. If somebody is taking medication, it needs to be allowed and not on the prohibited list. So please also ensure that if they do so, they checked the WADA list and what is allowed and that is not considered as doping, because we wouldn't want to have a case where the rider will test positive because he just took some pills in order to not feel the pain. There's another question here. Yes?
I have just one question. When starts legislation for the medical? Because sometimes you have opening the stables on Monday and the horse inspection is on Wednesday afternoon. Must be the medical or not assistance or anything else? When it will start that we will come under the jurisdiction from the FEI for these rules?
Yeah, I think that the challenge in general for all the matters that are being dealt with by officials, stewards, veterinarians is when do they have jurisdiction and when they don't. And we know that there are many things that are happening as of the opening of the stables, but technically the grand jury is only responsible and has jurisdiction from 1 hour before the horse inspection until 30 minutes after the results have been signed off. So here again, if something happened before, whether there are medics, paramedics or not, I don't know. It will also depend on the shows. I'm hoping that there will be, but that's something to be worked with the organizers. And also, it's important that the medical personnel are not afraid of horses. We did experience in Rio during the prize-giving ceremony that the groom got kicked in the head by a horse, and the paramedics didn't go into the arena because they were scared of the horses. So that didn't really help. So you need also to ensure that the people are correctly trained and they are having the habits of dealing with horses, these huge animals. Any other questions? No, thank you. Yes.
As we talked a lot about the athletes now, am I correct in the assumption that what the veterinary delegate has to do with the horse is more or less check the horse in a way that he finds out if the horse is fit to compete?
Yes.
So he would make another kind of trot up with the horse?
Yes, exactly.
And would that also require a person from the ground jury there to make that decision, or is that then just a veterinary decision?
I would say here that it would be a grand jury decision, but I need to check the rules and check also in practice how it's being dealt with, and maybe we need to clarify that as well to make sure that who needs to be there for the assessment, or whether you can only rely on the veterinarian. Thank you. One more.
Janet Curry, Ireland. Just going back, it's not the medical, but going back to limb sensitivity, the person responsible has the opportunity to withdraw the horse. If that is taken, then the limb sensitivity is being tested when it comes out of the arena. I take it then that the new rule where that horse would be eliminated and therefore still eligible for a prize, will that apply?
So if they withdraw, it's like if the horse had not started the competition. So there is no like sanction, no elimination, no disqualification, just did not start. Good. FEI safeguarding policy against harassment and abuse. Just wanted to highlight it to you. We do have a new policy since the 1st of January 2019. It's Appendix I of the General Regulations. It applies to athletes, accredited persons, FEI representatives, and officials as well. So be careful what you do, what you say. It's really important that you behave appropriately and correctly, and be also aware of the differences in cultures. Something that might be appropriate in one country is totally inappropriate in another country. So I also want you to be aware that the reporting of any case of harassment and abuse, including at FEI events, the current mechanism, it goes to either the FEI, and we have an athlete protection team which is composed of representative of the legal department, or the integrity unit. So that's the proper mechanism to report for persons that either have witnessed any abuse or harassment or have been harassed. And we want to ensure that it remains anonymous. It can be actually in person, verbal, written report. We give whatever opportunity for the people. But you may be faced with a situation that you witnessed harassment or abuse. So then I would invite you to take as much information as you can, but then that you can send an email to safeguarding@fei.org, and then it will be tackled by us. And if somebody asks you what to do, you should direct them to either the FEI or to the integrity unit. There is also an FEI incident reporting form available on the FEI website that is there, so you can also direct people to fill in that form, and then it is being sent to the FEI in a secured manner so that it doesn't go with social media or whatever. We want to really treat this as confidential and anonymous. Review of the FEI legal system. I just wanted you to know that it will be discussed at the FEI Sports Forum on the 15th of April 2019 in Lausanne. So I invite you to attend and to provide us with your comment. You probably all agree that the rules are very complex and not easy to understand. What is a protest? What is an appeal? What can you appeal? What can you protest? And so on. It's really a mix. So we really want to simplify that process. You are the best placed to give us feedback and about your experience and challenges. So really, please come to me or send me an email or come to the Sports Forum. I have already some ideas of what we can do. Nothing has been discussed internally yet, so I will first need to check with internally whether they agree with some way forward. And then we will also inform our board, because any changes to the general regulation need to be first signed off by the board, and then it will go through the normal consultation process with national federations, stakeholders, so including your club, so you can provide comments on the wording. But there are some questions for me, for example, do we need an appeal on site? Do we need an appeal committee? Or should we deal only with protests? Or sanctions, could we clarify the sanctions? Because sometimes you have a sanction is, if you do this behavior, the sanction is between 1 month up to life ban and the fine of 500 Swiss francs up to 15,000. It's not really clear where you draw the line, so maybe there are ways to really have a catalogue of sanctions that is clearer for officials for you to apply, and then it's also easier for the people who breach the rules to know, actually, if I breach that rule, I know exactly what is the consequence. So that's just some of the thoughts that we will be discussing, but that would be at the Sports Forum. So that's all for me. I do have one clarification regarding dogs, because I know that we are in a question federation, but welfare of the dog is paramount as well. No, what we had clarified now is there are lots of dogs running at events, and we don't really think that it's great from a safety perspective. So we do have a rule now that the dogs, if allowed at events, need to be leashed. And if they are not, there is a fine of 100 Swiss francs. So the question is, who can impose a fine, or when does the money go? So I'll give you my bank details so you can all know where the money will go. No, so basically what happens is you can collect the money on site, and if you get the money, the cash, then you send it with the report to the headquarters, and then we'll keep the money there. Or most likely the person will refuse to pay. So then if it's a person that is within the FEI system, a rider, a trainer, a horse owner, please take the information, the name and so on, so that we can send the invoice from the FEI headquarters and we can do the follow-up, and we have ways of forcing them to pay, because if they don't pay, they will be suspended. So I don't know whether you will experience that, but and as to who can do it, for me it can be anybody, chief steward, grand jury, whoever has the authority to do that on behalf of the FEI. So I don't know if there are any questions. You do have my contact details, but please first call John Roach, always, first instance. Then if you cannot get hold of John, it's Stefan. And then if really, really none of them are answering, you can call me. But normally, no, I got instructions from Ingmar that you were not allowed to call him directly. So, so are there any other questions? No? So thank you very much.
I wasn't planning to ask a question, but just I want to give you a gift. And I was referring to it, I'm not native English, so I said it was an old-fashioned English tie. But I was referring to the quality, sorry. So this is a good quality tie, and I'm giving you one, Michael. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mikael. I have one thing. While you were talking about your medical reports and everything, from an organizer's perspective, finding the forms on the website is very, very hard. Can we not just have one whole area that says forms? Because it's everywhere. Yeah? Just one thing. Because it is, you know, and I agree about the medical and I agree about everything, but just one area where we can all go to, an FEI platform, perhaps. I better not be rude about this one, because it is, honestly, as Stefan said earlier this morning, and as John said last night, it is a real honor to welcome Ingmar. He is probably one of the busiest men in the world with his commitments to the International Olympic Committee and various other governing bodies of world sport. And it's tremendous that he's taken time on a Saturday afternoon to be with you here for the club meeting. So without further ado, Ingmar de Vos, the FEI President.
Thank you very much, and I have to say my English is not my mother tongue either, so with Mr. Luiten we can easily talk in Dutch, and but we are happy to be here in Amsterdam, and as you will see, I adapted a little bit the color of my tie, which probably will change later today, but yeah. So thank you very much for the invitation, and it's really a pleasure for me to be here. And the reason that I'm here is also to underpin the fact that officials are important. Officials are one of the most important stakeholders for the success of our sport. And I believe it's really the duty of the FEI to support the officials in all ways possible. And we are trying to do that. I'm sure it can be better, but it's like always work in progress, but officials are key to the success of our sport, and that's why we are here. We have the jumping director here, we have the legal director of the FEI here. We are very happy to have the chair of the jumping committee, who is a high-level official, so officials are taking over, and so we need to be very careful what we say, also with these harassment policies. We have created, as you will know, in 2017 an officials working group, because we believe that there is a lot that needs to be done to improve the situation of the official. This working group has delivered a report with 15 recommendations, and that was delivered in 2018. And these recommendations are very interesting, they are very broad, and we have in FEI headquarters give it a lot of thought how to implement them, because it's nice to get recommendations, but then the second part is to implement them, and that's not that easy. So I will try to give you an overview of where we stand there. You know that sport is more professional than ever before, with an increased level of responsibility of officials. And this is not only because there is an important increase of prize money. There was lately a show in Prague, I believe, where it was over 10 million euros prize money, which is a lot. But also your decisions are not only impacting on prize money distribution, but also on distribution of points for the Longines ranking. And the Longines ranking list being a very important tool for distributing invitations for athletes to events. Very important, because it's a way to measure the quality of the athletes. And let's not forget, also your judgment can have a very important impact on qualification for Olympic Games. Olympic Games, which are still, in my view at least, the most important competition for our sport every 4 years. And not only the qualification, but also the minimum eligibility, which is also an important criteria. So where do we stand with the implementation of these 15 recommendations? And let's maybe start with the easiest one. It's, I think, the most important one, crucial one, but in order to start the process running, and that was recommendation number 14, establish a new management position within the FEI headquarters, namely a head of officials. I'm very happy that after quite a difficult search to find somebody who would fit that role, we have found the person and started beginning of January, Frank Spadinger from Austria, who has a long career in a national federation, but who is also an official. So that would hopefully will shorten the time needed for him to get fully productive, I would say. I know he was invited here, but we thought it was a bit too early to ask him already to give an explanation here, as we have to give him a little bit of time to start understanding the role in the function. But having him will drastically shorten the period needed for such a person to be operational, fully operational, and tackle the things. So that's an important box that was ticked. We have recommendations 1 and 2, which are the introduction of a single code of conduct for all FEI officials, and number 2, the introduction of job descriptions for all FEI officials. I'm happy to say that this has been delivered. It's, by the way, I believe, a topic later today on the agenda, the code of conduct. There is also mentioning of checklists, but we have to identify why we need checklists. Maybe we don't need them if the job description is already very detailed, or maybe we need them more for to identify what we need to educate to our officials. Recommendation 3 is a very important one for me personally. It says develop a competency-based evaluation system with the goal of replacing the age limit. I've always had something against the age limit because, and I'm not pointing at anybody particular, but I know very clever and active and healthy people that are over 70 or 72, and I know also people that are much younger and absolutely not qualified. So it has nothing to do with age. And I'm very happy that we are now tackling this, but it's not easy because you need to replace it by something. And when we looked at developing a competency-based evaluation system, we thought to be clever and to look at other international federations to understand what they do so that we can steal this information. But regretfully, there is none. And these other international federations are asking us, well, keep us informed of what you're doing, so that maybe we can also implement it. So basically, it's something that we have to invent, start from scratch with a blank sheet. We need to identify and see how we are going to do this. And of course, there was a big discussion internally of, we first need this system before we can abolish the age limit. And I didn't really agree with that. So we have, as you can see, and we published it not so long ago, we have now a procedure in place where we can allow people to stay on for a longer time until this competency-based evaluation system is operational. So we are really looking forward to that, but as it is new, as we need to do it from scratch, we need to take time to take the right approach. So you will allow me to apologize for the fact that this is not something that will be done in one day. But at least we have given the opportunity in the meantime for officials that did good work, whose term is coming to an end last year or this year, to prolong it on an annual basis until we have this assessment tool in place. So this is something we will work on, and we have told the new director of officials and education that this is his first priority. So that's good to know, and we have already had some discussions about how we can do it, but it's quite some work. Recommendations 4, 5, 6, and 7, they are about education, and of course that is work in process. An education calendar needs to be established in function of the needs per function, per level, and per region, and they need to be integrated in the FEI database. The framework of these courses need to be harmonized across the disciplines. Now it was each discipline did it in a different way. There are some basic things like the things that Mikael explained, appeal, protest, disqualification, elimination. The legal system need to be the same across all disciplines and need to be educated the same way. It makes no sense that in one course for driving, one is telling something completely different than in the course for jumping. So it needs to be integrated and needs to be signed off by the relevant department. We will create course directors and a director general list for each discipline. Who will overlook this, and we will also educate course directors from a pedagogical perspective, because that's also important. How is the message brought to our officials? How is education organized? And it's not really complicated to do all of that, but it's a lot of work. If we have to do it for all the disciplines, all levels, and we have also to take in consideration the different situation. Mikael mentioned already there is different cultures in different parts of the world, but also different languages. So we need to establish there a full and integrated plan. Recommendation 8 is maybe a very easy one. It's a compulsory national federation recommendation only upon entering the first level. And that one has a bit of an history, because of course we recognize the authority and the role of the national federation in not only entering athletes for events, but also to put forward applications for officials. We believe that the first door, because many of the athletes come from as a national official and then make a move like a promotion to the international level. But we also believe that once the National Federation has proposed a candidate, and this candidate is starting his career within the FEI, that we do not have to ask all the time national federations to approve the next steps. They can, of course, refuse an official at a certain stage if an official did something wrong in its country, and the federation feels that the official cannot continue on an international level. We will assess that, and we can of course take a decision. But once an official in general started his career within the FEI, then we should not ask the national federation back. I remember a time was sometimes very funny. The national federations entered officials for courses, and even if these officials passed the course brilliantly, then the national federation refused to appoint or to sign these promotion off. And that is, of course, if you say A, you need to see B also. It's not fine to allow somebody to participate in a course and then afterwards say, no, we don't take the result in consideration. So we know that there is always a bit of a possibility for some closed shop maneuvers, so we want to avoid that. But that's single entry, and we will, of course, do that in an integrated database. Recommendation 9 is the FEI to establish a common fund to support developing officials and getting more officiating experience. This fund has been created and that has been communicated, is published on the website. But we need more tools to implement this in a transparent and in a consistent way. And you have also seen recommendation 10, which is the FEI to introduce a rotation for FEI officials at FEI events. We believe that we need to avoid that at a certain moment we get something what is sometimes called like a Stockholm syndrome, where the official gets so attached to the organizer that the objectivity is disappearing. So rotation is important. It's already partly implemented, especially when it comes to veterinarians. We have this 3-year rotation. We have given this a lot of thought, and we have now defined what, and it's quite detailed, what we believe rotation is. And we know that there are sometimes these events, multi-weeks events for especially young horses in the winter season, where sometimes in parts of the world you have events that go on for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. We of course understand that we need to adapt our definition of rotation in function of these kind of events also, but we have done that. But what is really important, and this is also related to recommendation 11, which says FEI to create a development pool. This is a pool of officials that are identified as needing support in order to make progress in their career, and especially to gain enough experience by officiating. And for that, we need also recommendation 12, which is say that the FEI to extend the number of FEI officials appointed to FEI events in all disciplines. I mean, why do we need that? It's just to give opportunities to officials that never get opportunities to officiate, to get experience. Now, you know, we have in total in the FEI more than 4,500 events every year, which is a record. We have thousands of officials, which is great, fantastic. So, but you will understand that if we want to implement these recommendations, that we really need to develop and improve our database, because we want to identify officials that have passed an exam, but never were on a schedule of a show. And in the end, after 2 years, no experience, they lose their qualification. So we need to identify them. So if we want to help officials, we need to identify who they are, where they are, how much time a year they are officiating or not, and then we can help them with having more appointments to be done by the FEI. That's not to make life of organizers bad, but it's just to give our officials the chance to get educated and to get practical experience, because it's not good only to pass an exam. So for that we have to create a lot of things, and especially an integrated database that will identify and will give our staff the opportunity to identify the officials that need support, that need appointments in order to be active, and in order also to make the necessary promotions, because we need good officials and we need high-level officials, because as you can see in our calendar, the number of high-level events is increasing every year. So we need to have a very clear pathway for our officials. So one of the things that we also will do is introduction of what we call the electronic or the online schedule. Now you know this is this very lengthy paper document We want now this document to become an electronic form where only the fields that are relevant have to be filled in, but also where the officials will be entered like in a database so that we know who is going where and that we can have a complete overview of the whereabouts of our officials. Recommendation 13 is a difficult one. This is a bit together with recommendation 15, and it's all about, on the one hand, the creation of a top layer of FEI officials for the professional sport. That's a tricky one. And it's also recommendation 15 to develop a harmonized approach to officials per diems across geography and discipline. It's also a complicated one, and I will a bit explain. Both recommendations have and will most probably have an important financial impact, especially for those who are supposed to pay the bill. And I believe to understand that everybody, except maybe those, that everybody expect that organizers have to pay that bill. But you need to know that, like, we have a memory of understanding with the International Jumping Officials Club. We have also a memorandum of understanding, an agreement with the Organizers Club, where we have the obligation every time that we would take a decision that would have an important financial impact on the organizers that we need to consult them. And of course, we need to be careful that we do not lose organizers. Be aware of the fact that in many events and in some other disciplines, there are officials that are volunteers that are not paid, because if the organizers should pay them, then the organization cannot take place. This is the reality in some parts of the world and in some disciplines. So we need to agree that the quality of the work done by officials should be the same, also whatever level it is. It's not because there is a lower level event that then the quality of the judging or of the officials can be less. I mean, we need to do a professional and a good job at each level, and not only at the 5-star events. So we need to be very careful with the implementation of these recommendations, and whereas some responsibilities can, of course, vary according to the level, which can then be reflected in a different level of compensation, we need also to avoid to create a closed shop again for officials. So. And let's also not forget that in some countries there is also an important tax aspect of it. I remember a story of, and it was not in jumping, was in dressage, but of some judges who were judging in the United States and got a very nice per diem. I was really surprised. It was like $500 per day, dressage. With the result that these judges the next year couldn't come anymore because they couldn't get into the country because they need a green card. So sometimes it can work counterproductive. So we need to look at all different aspects of this financial policy. Anyway, I went through these 15 recommendations, so this is work in progress, and we are very enthusiastic. And under the leadership of our new Director Officials and Education, I'm sure that things will move quickly now. We have already taken the commitment to invest, so not only in having this director, but also invest a lot in the development of IT. In order to create these platforms, these online forums. We want to go more and more to online forums. We started with veterinary. As you know, that we have to deal with, I believe it was like something like 3,000 veterinary reports per year. This has been automated. This is now an electronic document. So if a veterinarian puts in a certain comment, then it goes directly to the right department. Nobody has to read all these papers in order to identify if there is an issue, and we want now to extend that also to other officials. And the first priority will be, and I'm happy to tell you that, will be jumping, where we will develop the online report, the digital report for the jumping judge, so the foreign judge, and for the chief steward. It will be the first one that will be developed in jumping. So you will be able to do it online. It will also avoid a lot of work, I believe, in John's, or I hope at least, in John's department, so they don't have to go to these piles of paper that they receive every week, and that things are flagged automatically, and that we also can react much faster by informing organizers and national federations about things that need to be approved at their event. So I hope this really proves our utmost respect for officials, and that we will hopefully in the very near future that you will see a real difference, and that you will feel more supported by the FEI than ever before. Let me also take the opportunity to the last 5 minutes to highlight some other points that are in the pipeline and could be of interest for you. Mikael already gave the indication that we are reviewing the legal system. I believe that he did not mention, but of course before the sports forum there will be a document that will be shared with everybody. No? You are going just to open the discussion at the sports forum. Well, that will be new. But then I believe it's really important that if you have points that you bring it to his attention so that he already can prepare himself for that. Also the online, and I see here a very famous athlete walking in, so it's good to see that also the athletes are here to support the officials. But just to allow me to make a little point on the online invitation and online entry system, which is, as you know, very important for us, because we can make as many rules and publish as many rules as we want, like the invitation system. But if we have no tools to implement it, then it's very interesting literature, but nothing more. So we have been working last year already with some pilot phases with a new online invitation system. Some of you have probably already worked with it. We came to the conclusion that it basically did not deliver what we wanted, because the system was made in such a way that we are inviting athletes in descending order according to the Longines ranking, but that the mechanism was not fast enough to go down, deep down in the ranking to identify athletes that should be invited. It just didn't go fast enough. Although it was already a 10-week process with 8 weeks of active invitations, we only could go down to rank number, I believe, 360 something, and that was still not enough to get athletes from the ranking participating in, certainly not a 1-star, but there it doesn't apply, of course, not for a 2-star, but also not for a 3-star, and even for a 4-star, partly. The only events where it worked was for 5-star events, but that are the minority of the number of events. So we decided to change the system, to review it. And what we are now working on, but that's our IT department, and where we hope that we will have a pilot phase in the second part of the year, is where we will allow athletes to apply for events, so that we will turn it around, and it's the athlete who has to indicate where he wants to go, and probably with this wish list. First, of course, I would like to go to that 5-star. If I cannot go to that 5-star, I would like to go to that 4-star. And my third choice will be a 2-star closer to home than a 3-star farther away. So they will have the possibility to indicate their preference. And then at a certain date, the computer will attribute the places to the athletes in function of their wish list, so that we can make sure that the spots that are reserved for athletes based upon merit through the FEI Longines ranking list, that we are actually filling them up, because today, you know, all the unused spots, they go to the organizer, which is fine. We can live with that, but we need to do our utmost to fill up all these spots for athletes, for riders, as much as possible. So we change the system, and that will hopefully then allow us in 2020, 1st of January, to start with this system then for all events. So pilot phase is second part of the year, because they need to write quite some IT programs for that. Yes, we had last year, World Equestrian Games. I think from a sports perspective, and certainly in show jumping, they were a big success. But there were some issues, as you all know, especially in endurance. We have been looking at World Equestrian Games. We have discussed it in our board, and we have presented it also in the framework of our General Assembly last year in Manama. We have now taken the approach to say, listen, we are opening a candidate bidding process for individual championships, as the World Equestrian Games is so big. We have already opened for 2022. We have already opened that two times. We have opened an application process without success, without finding a good bidder. We also don't want to be, I would say, being kept hostage by an organizing committee, especially if there is only one bidder, because these are our experiences that these are negotiations from the day that the host agreement is signed till and during the games. It's ongoing negotiations between the organizer and with the organizer, who tries to get a better deal. And of course, who uses, not to say abuses, the position to negotiate all over and over and over again. And I think in such a way that I can say that from a financial perspective, these World Equestrian Games for the FEI have already cost a lot of money. So I think we needed to take the right decision, and we are opening this bidding process, and we hope then later this year in November to allocate World Championships. Now, is this the end of the World Equestrian Games? No, not necessarily, because for the World Championships we are encouraging organizers to introduce multiple bids, bids for different disciplines together, whereas for continental championships we prefer them to be isolated, because it gives opportunities to smaller cities to bid and to host such an important event. But for World Championships we give a preference, or we will give a preference, to bids that are combining more disciplines. So if there is still a possibility for a bidder to come up with an idea to organize World Equestrian Games, but this will be then evaluated and assessed, comparing it with other bids that are introduced and that are not necessarily combining all the events. And we also want to go to organizers and venues that have already proven to work. So no new venues, no for the first time World Equestrian Games in an infrastructure, in a venue that has never been used for it before. So we really, these are our World Championships, and they are, especially in our Olympic disciplines, qualifies for the Olympic Games. So we need to make sure that the organizer, the venue, have proven to work and not jump into the unknown and then maybe have big problems and no qualification for the Olympic Games. That for the World Championships, I'm also happy to say that finally, and it took some time, but that the end of last year for the Longines FEI Nations Cup, we have now the organizers signed up for the next 3 years. So that secures the future of the Longines FEI Nations Cup. We still have to allocate the final of Division 2, but also there for 2019 we will have a very good organizer. So that's fine. It took a lot of time, but I think we need to be very grateful to Longines to have switched from timekeeper sponsor of the Nations Cup to the title sponsor of the Nations Cup, which really allows us to continue. Last but not least, next year Olympic Games. Next year, 2020. Olympic Games in Tokyo, of course, very important for the future of our sport, and I'm very happy that our position of our 3 Olympic disciplines and the Paralympic discipline is safe. We are in Tokyo. Much progress is made there. The venue will be fantastic. It's a brand new venue. It's the same venue that was used for the Olympic Games in 1964, but they have put everything down, and they are building a complete new venue, which is almost finished. So, Kazu, you were also involved in that, and we are very grateful for the Japan Racing Association, who is the owner of that venue, for doing all these investments. They are not on the account of the Olympic Games. Only the operational costs are on the account of the Olympic Games. The investment is done by the Japan Racing Association. But I'm also happy to say we are good for Paris also, Paris 2024, where we will be in a temporary venue in front of Le Château de Versailles, which is a very nice place. We are going there on the 5th of February to look at the venue and to see how the FEI can support the organizer, because this is in line with Olympic Agenda 2020 and the new norm established by the IOC, where you can understand, given the fact that the IOC find it's more and more difficult to find organizers for such big events as Olympic Games, like we have the difficulty for the World Equestrian Games. So they introduced the new norm, where we need to be very careful. We look very careful to the cost effectiveness of the games in order to deliver good games, but with a price tag that is acceptable. And the role of the international federations in all sports will increase very importantly, because we have the know-how, we have the expertise. These organizing committees that only do one game and then they finish, they don't have that expertise. You also know that there are a lot of consultants running around to try to find business, which makes it also sometimes more expensive. So the role of the international federations and also of the FEI to support organizing committees in delivering these games with a normal acceptable price tag will increase a lot. And I would also like to thank the people that are from the FEI that are involved in this and that are supporting us, not only in Olympic Games but also in Pan American Games, which will take place this year in Lima, Asian Games and so on. So the role of the international federation is important. You know that we have new formats for the Olympic Games. We are not going to test them for the first time at the Olympic Games. That would be a higher risk. We have identified an organizer that is prepared to test them, and that's Hagen, the show of Mr. Kasselman. We will there test jumping and dressage, new formats, and we are inviting all the relevant partners to be there, like Olympic Broadcasting System, ORIS, the result system, Swiss Timing for the timekeeping and data handling, so OBS for the broadcasting, for graphics, so that we can test everything, and if necessarily we do another test until things are perfect, because we want these Olympic Games to be a big success. So this is what I wanted just to bring to you in a nutshell. As a closing, I would say really we very much appreciate what you do every day and the important responsibilities you have. We know it's not always easy. You sometimes need to make difficult decisions that don't make you necessarily popular. An official does not need to be popular, but dialogue with all stakeholders is, of course, very important. But be assured that we are here for you. The FEI is a service organization. We are also here to service our officials, which, as I said in my introduction, play a very important role in the success of our sport. And I wish you all the best and good luck in your future projects and career. Thank you very much.
Mr. De Vos, thank you very much. You promised us an update on the recommendations. You updated us much more to give us an insight for your daily business and the progress the FEI is making. So thank you very much. And I can assure you the title was Cooperation, IGOC and FEI on the recommendations. We're glad to help you implementing the recommendations. So thank you. You were talking about your Thai. It's a wonderful Thai when in the Netherlands. You get free drinks in the restaurant, I think. But we also have a special Thai for you. It's very high quality. It's coming from an island. And this is for you. Thank you very much.
An island that used to be part of Europe. Anyway. Sadly, that's all I would say. Right, it's lunchtime now. Thank you very much, Ingmar. Thank you very much to all our speakers this morning, to John, to Stefan, and to Mikael. Lunchtime, and then we'll listen to the wise words of Henrik von Eckermann at 2:30 this afternoon.